So, any of you like to answer that question? Where are you seeing the most impactful application of healthcare this day? You have to press that button.
Okay, perfect. Hi, good morning, everyone. First of all, maybe I'll just share a bit of context about the work we do at MEDIC. So we are the steward of the Community Health Toolkit, which is an open source digital public good meant to serve community health workers when providing care to their communities in the last mile. We've been involved in several AI-related explorations, but maybe before I dig into that, I want to create a separation between predictive AI and generative AI, as there are different use cases and capabilities around that in the communities we serve. First of all, predictive AI was there for a while, so it's not something that's like very, very new. And there are explorations around diagnostic and others. We've been recently involved in a project with Oyowe, and we integrated their Health Pulse AI applications with the CHT here in Uganda and also in Kenya. And what it does, it's basically like the community health workers take a photo of malaria rapid diagnostic test, and the application will give a result if it's either positive or negative. And this will ultimately help in febrile surveillance, febrile illness surveillance for the children in the countries that we work with. If this is successful, as now we are in the pilot phase with both ministries in Kenya and Uganda, this can scale up to 200,000 community health workers, serving more than 90 million people. So there's a huge impact there. But again, this is still in a pilot phase. From the generative AI perspective, well, we work at the last mile. So you can imagine that generative AI is not yet supporting really well offline first, low resource device, non-English maybe trained language models. So what we've done, and actually we are still in a pilot phase for that too, everything's pilot at the moment in case you haven't observed, is to work on task prioritization and route optimization for community health workers when providing care and visiting the different households in the communities they serve. Unfortunately, that works just for online users at the moment, as you can imagine. But we are trying to see what are the learnings. At least we can calculate how much that would cost, what are the resources that are necessary, and at a later stage when maybe devices will be able to run LLMs, who knows, in the future, then maybe we can extend it to offline too. And then there's a third angle, I'll try not to be too long, which is around the contributors' perspective of the open source. I know that that's not directly related to the healthcare providing, but we do have a lot of AI exploration from the perspective of contributing to the open source. Still exploration phase. I want to be honest that we haven't yet got big feature development in the CHT through AI or by using agents such as Copilot and others. But we've managed to at least generate some automated testing, better documentation. We have an AI assistant for the technical documentation. So there are small things here and there that can make contributors' life easier, but nothing revolutionary for now. So back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. So Solomon, do you have anything to add to us on this?
Good morning. As mentioned, I'm Solomon Ssevvume, and I work with NETS under the School of Public Health. In terms of the work that we have done as a program, but also as a country, I think we have mentioned in numerous forums within the OpenMRS that we have quite an extensive implementation of Uganda EMR, which is a system based off OpenMRS as a platform. And so we are trying to digitize. Yesterday when the commissioner for DHI was here on behalf of the Director General, he mentioned that the country is on the path to digitize the entire health information, the entire health sector. And we have been at the forefront of that, obviously using OpenMRS, Some of you were here when we started with OpenMRS as a platform, the way it comes. Then obviously we modified it into Uganda EMR to serve Uganda specific needs. So I would say that that route has been a success. But from an AI perspective, and I think I share the same concerns as my colleague from Medic, we have tried to do some work around clinical decision support, predictions, and even diagnostics. The challenge is that, and I'm hoping that this conference really, some people can share their experiences. The challenge is actually in implementation of this particular project. So if I am in a lab seated somewhere and I design a model, say, that detects be it TB, be it cervical cancer, how then do I deploy it at a facility level to be used? Do I deploy it as an integration with an OpenMRS-based system, or I simply create an online platform to make sure that that service is provided? But in the event that I create an online platform, how then is it going to work in areas that are resource constrained, so you don't have internet, or probably the service provider there are not as tech savvy as you would like them to be? So those are some of the challenges that we are trying to navigate, and hopefully as we move as a community towards integrating artificial intelligence along with OpenMRS, hopefully some of those challenges are going to be solved in the near future. Thank you. So in terms of artificial intelligence, I think we should really focus ourselves on things that, one, improve service delivery from both a clinician's perspective and a patient's perspective. Now, we can do very many other complicated things we can do, but I have learned that our people at these healthy center 3s, healthy center 4s, most of them don't need very complicated things. They simply need help with very simplified workflows. If a client is going to get lost to follow up, they need to know that, because probably they don't have the resources to monitor this client over time, to follow them up after they have dropped out of care. But if I can simply flag this and say, hey, this client is actually going to get lost with the trajectory you're taking, can I provide an alternate course of action? I think for me, that is going to be at the core of our impact, but also it will be speaking into what we do as a community, which is actually saving lives.
Thank you for your wonderful answer. So, as AI become take more important roles in healthcare, some people might get worried that will this AI thing will replace us. So, how do you think we should approach it so the AI going to be a collaborative partner rather than the replacement?
Thank you. We've all had this phrase, we see it again and again. AI will take over the world. Yeah? But if you look at it keenly, we see it's still very shaky, and we don't imagine that it's going to take over the world anytime soon. So the same question is also here with us in healthcare. What we should think about is we should design the AI as a second pair of eyes that are used in a clinical system, and not as a replacement for the clinician, not as a replacement for the doctor. Because now we are going to put AI in competition with the doctor. That's not what we are trying to do, and we will never be able to achieve that. So for me, I think what's important here is to design the AI to support decision-making, not to take over decision-making.
Yeah, and I think in the same line, we should really look at AI as a tool. It's a tool to support me to do my job. If someone is really worried that AI is taking over my job, then maybe indeed it should take over that job. The idea is that it should make you more effective as a person. So if I'm a medical doctor attending to a client, as opposed to reading a lot of content, a lot of knowledge, going on Google Scholar and searching this and searching that, is there a way that I can utilize this tool to get the answers that I'm actually looking for. If I am a developer and I've faced this initially just before ChatGPT, when ChatGPT had come, there was a query I was trying to optimize and took me around 2 days to look at it. Until when I said, but there is a tool they have told me about. I put it there and I told it, please optimize this query. The query I was given was running, the one I had was running within 1.5 hours. I was given a query that runs in less than 5 minutes. The idea is that we can be effective if we use artificial intelligence as the tools, and even within the community, as the tools to improve service delivery. That the person, whether you're a coder, whether you're a project manager, or even the person at the facility, they're not essentially replaced, but they are becoming more effective in the way they are providing a service. So I think we should look at it as just another tool that probably it is more effective than the resources that we've had, but it should be something that we look at and how can we utilize it to ensure that we are more effective and our productivity increases. Thank you.
Okay, so like AI, the cloud has become a play an important role in healthcare. So it has become the engine that is like driving the whole innovation in healthcare. So in your view, what do you think the most benefit of using cloud in healthcare? Use cloud technologies in healthcare. Just beyond things like using it to manage beyond things like going beyond things like storage and computing power.
No, great question. I believe I will give an example on how cloud helped in some of the work we're doing. It's definitely around scalability and on-demand resourcing. For example, the community health workers have internet maybe just once per month when they get their data package, or when they go to a facility where there's internet and they can sync the data. So we've noticed like huge spikes in the usage of the application during those times. And by using tools such as Kubernetes, for example, you can easily allocate more resources during those times without a lot of effort to really support the performance when that's most needed. And I think that's one of the biggest advantages of using cloud. As for example, in comparison to the on-premise, where if you need more storage or more RAM, you need to go through a procurement process and get that delivered, and it can take days, weeks. With cloud, you can do it right away, and often at a cost that's maybe lower than purchasing that physically.
Thank you. So with the use of cloud, okay. So with the use of cloud, people get concerned about the data security and privacy. So how do you think we should design this cloud-based system to accumulate those things?
Okay. When we talk about the cloud and in terms of security, it's one of the biggest advantages that cloud setups give small facilities. So because a cloud system already takes care of a number of security issues, things with redundancy, things with encryption, things with automated backups, audit trails, logs. These are things that if you leave the facility to do on its own, it might be very expensive or time-consuming or just very, very difficult. But the cloud already has these things for us. So when it comes to security and the cloud, it's a little bit easier to manage. And it's something that we should really, really take advantage of. But I will let my other colleague, Solomon, add a little on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've actually made the argument before that probably data is more secure in the cloud, provided that it is done well, than with on-premise infrastructure. And I have seen this in terms of in most cases, we do not have the necessary in-country expertise to handle the security that is, in most cases, it is a learning curve. So I need to do this form of security. I need to know that type of security. How can I secure this? In most cases, that form of expertise, not many of us have that expertise. And even when we actually find the expertise in terms of the personnel, we may not have the resources to maintain them specifically to provide security. So I think the idea of using cloud services, the fact that all of these things that security, load balancing, redundancy, all of these things are taken care of. The challenge I see, and probably I hope I'm not preempting the conversation, the problem I see, especially in this part of the world, is that we are not yet convinced that hosting data in the cloud is actually a secure way of storing data. And that has come up in very many numerous conversations. Whenever you say, okay, can we keep this data and synchronize it and keep it here and there? I think some of the policymakers and the decision makers still have a problem with that. But I think continuously engaging them and probably sharing experiences with people that have already done it and have not had issues with it, I think we shall be able to achieve it.
Thank you. Andrea, do you have anything to add?
Maybe a quick one in addition to all the capabilities that cloud providers bring around security. There's also other things that need to be intentional, such as encryption of the data, both on the storage, but also in the different endpoints where the data is exchanged. There are things like MFA, two-factor authentication, that needs to be taken into consideration. Monitoring, alerting. I feel like there are many other things that need to be done on top of cloud. So it doesn't come like out of the box. I feel like there's a lot of intentionality to be put there by the people using the cloud to ensure that things are actually secure. That's from my side.
Thank you. So digital divide is a major hurdle we face in healthcare IT, right? So do you think cloud first strategy will help us in that to overcome that, or it will hinder our ability, especially in the places like rural areas and impoverished countries?
Okay, thank you. So I think the question is about cloud first solution. So like we've been trying to mention, cloud, I think all of us agree that cloud is actually more secure than in facility. But most of the time when we talk about cloud first solution, it may end up being cloud only solution. So the solution here for me is to use a hybrid approach. So a hybrid, or sometimes they call it edge computing or something like that, but a hybrid approach. So for example, last year when I was talking about running OpenMRS on a Raspberry Pi device, I actually have the device here.
You can show it first.
Yeah, I can show. So last year, I was talking about running OpenMRS on a Raspberry Pi device. It was a hybrid solution. We had this tiny Raspberry Pi device that we decided to make it run OpenMRS for the very first time last year. And other organizations have been using it as well, even before, to do some other kind of EMRs, not exactly OpenMRS. So then, this kind of solution, it means it is offline at the facility. And then, periodically, synchronize that data to the cloud. So that is the solution that we are trying to bring, and it is called a hybrid. In one instance, you are using an offline device at the facility, and then periodically, you synchronize the data to the cloud. So I think when we talk about cloud-first solutions, we need to be very careful because mostly it ends up being cloud-only, meaning you have a URL, you have internet access, you operate from online. But a hybrid solution is what we need in a setup with low resource settings like in Africa. Yeah.
So like the device Kevin shared with us, there could be many and like hybrid and edge technologies that can be used in cloud computing models. So what do you guys think? What are the other things we could use to like improve this cloud use of the cloud technologies in healthcare and reduce the digital divide?
Um, do you want to go?
Okay.
Yeah.
The, I'm going to talk about two things, and these are at the core of what we are trying to do here. One is interoperability, and then scalability. Those two things really are at the core of what we are trying to do as a country. And wouldn't be a better driver for interoperability, for example, than cloud services. Right now we are suffering, okay, not suffering, but we're finding it hard to implement because of all of these policies around how data moves from one facility to another. Then how do I exchange data between a facility-based system and a national-based system? And it's giving us a lot of headache around security, because then I have to implement it, around storage, around downtime, because then I have to plan for it. It's really, cloud services would provide a better way to allow systems to share information, be interoperable in a very, very seamless manner. So for me, in terms of additional utilization of cloud services, achieving interoperability for me would be the first thing. Finally, the other thing would be scalability. Right now, if I need to, if there is a new facility that government has launched, and I need to put there an EMR, I will have to first go there and make sure that they have a very wonderful server that can run a system, set them up, and do all of these things. That way, our scalability is very expensive. When you look at the costs that we input, and I'm very happy that we have colleagues from Reach Out Umbia here, those of you that have the time, you can reach out to them, and they can share with you how much it costs for them to run a single facility, let alone around 20 facilities. Because each facility must be treated as a standalone unit in and of its own, which we shouldn't really be able to do. So if I am going to scale this system across 2,400 facilities, I have to plan for each and every one of those facilities. As opposed to if I had cloud services, I would simply know, okay, as long as I connect this particular facility to this particular service, they will be able to work seamlessly. So I think for me, in terms of reducing the digital divide, those two issues, make sure that cloud services would help us have interoperable systems, and then cloud services will ensure that we greatly reduce the cost of scaling most of these systems that we have.
Sorry. So when we like start implementing these newer technologies like artificial intelligence, we have to think beyond the technology. We have to take things like strategy and ethical concerns into consideration. So how do you think we could ensure this digital healthcare system stays patient first and patient centric?
Maybe I can go first. Um, I see two dimensions to that. First of all, from the perspective of the care provider, the technology needs to work. Because if the person providing the care has to deal with technology that they don't understand, or it bugs, or it sends like weird errors, or it's like super slow, they cannot focus on the patient. They actually focus on the technology. So it has to work. It has to be intuitive. It has to be empowering. So human-centered design, when building the technology, is really important to ensure that it's augmenting the capabilities of the care provider and not just putting a burden on them. But also from we need like short feedback loops in case something doesn't go as expected with that technology. So I think that's one item. And the second one, I think it's around a continuum of care. My colleague here mentioned interoperability. I think technologies, cloud can enable the continuum of care through loss to follow up, for example, and referral that also my colleague talked about, and so on. And I think that's where the true power of this kind of solution lie into in ensuring there's a continuity through all the systems of like providing care to people.
I am going to simply submit on one thing, and that is, please design for the user. We have had cases where, because we're very tech-savvy people, I have seen here, most of us are holding MacBooks. Most of us have a bachelor's degree. Most of us have spent over 5 years in the computing world. In other words, we're very comfortable. And sometimes, because of that background, we forget that the person for whom we are designing these systems, they are actually not as, say, tech savvy as we are. They don't have enough resources and things like that. And I remember one day we designed something that we thought was so beautifully done that everyone will appreciate it. When we took it to the facility, clearly you could see clinicians are struggling to use it. Because, I test it, and this was during the pilot phase. But me, when I'm testing it, I am testing it with an imaginary patient. So I see a button is here, it is this side, there is something this side, I have a panel that is rendering here, and it's beautiful. Then you reach a facility, and the clinician has a line of patients waiting. He's not going to see all of these fancy things that you've put in the system. All they care about is, if I click on this button, what is the response time? Do I get to see exactly what I need to see? You might have designed a system that provides a lot of information, but to someone that has patients in a long queue, they will probably never see that. So when we're designing, when we're thinking, when we're developing systems, we really need to design for the user and not for us, the developers. I think that is what I want to submit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So when we start using these newer AI technologies and things, we are starting to see an algorithmic bias, right? So how we can ensure that we are using like correct data and diverse data that represent our patients, and what do you think would be the real world consequences of algorithmic bias?
Yes, thank you. So, algorithm bias in AI is actually very real. And it happens a lot, and especially in our case here in Africa. We tend to use open source systems, which is very good. I'm not disputing that. But sometimes when you're working, you don't have a data set you're working with. Okay? So you're building an AI solution. You use a data that you found online. So the data set does not reflect an African setup. And then that is what you will be using to compare with what we are doing here. And all of a sudden, we have an AI that doesn't speak our language, an AI that is kind of biased. So that is one of the reasons why we can have that. Another thing is we need to be just very careful when developing these AI systems and ensure that we do validation, data validation, thoroughly and test it properly so that we avoid this biasness. But I will let my colleague here also add from her experience. Yeah, thank you.
Just from where he has picked, it stops. We've had that particular challenge when we are designing some of the AI models that we've dealt with. And I'm going to give just an example to illustrate the point. So one of the things you're interested in is date of birth for the patient and probably their next return visit date. When are they coming back to care? So you're looking at the data and you find the patient was born in 1900. Like, who is that person? Surely. But when you look at the data, the clinician is saying the date of birth for this person is, say, January 15th, 1900. Then you go and look at the next return visit date for the same, so probably for a different person, and the guidance is that at least a client must always have a visit in a year. The maximum you can spend without coming to the facility is 1 year. And when you look at the next return visit date, the facility is saying this person should come back to a facility in the year 2070. And that is the actual data that you have found at the facility. So it has introduced a certain level of, inaccuracies, incompleteness within some of the models. And I hope that colleagues implementing some of these models, you will extend yourself some grace, but also allow ourselves enough time to learn how we are going to deal with this. Because at the facility level, those are the realities. You're going to find a lot of data that is missing, and yet you need it. Now, from a data entry point of view, what we've done is to be very strict on data validation. Now, that has a challenge that if I need 10 indicators captured about a particular patient and you can't continue unless those are provided, it increases the service time for one particular patient. Because then the clinician has to make sure that all of this information is provided. But for cases of accuracy, we have found out to be that is a price, it's a good price to pay for us to have accurate models. And that's what we're trying to do. The idea is that as opposed to picking an online data set that I don't know from which environment, from which facility, I would rather use my facility data set, study it, and now if I say this model needs exactly 10 indicators to accurately give me a prediction, I put very, very strict guidelines and data validation rules on those indicators to ensure that I eliminate that form of challenges around the quality of the data.
Thank you.
Quick addition. I love the point about data labeling and using own data sets. I think that's a really, really good point. And to your other point around language that these models are trained with, I was happy to see emerging a series of open source small language models such as Incuba LM. I believe that was trained on Swahili, Yoruba, and other African language. And I've seen an emerging trend in those appearing and being used for even low resource devices, which looks very promising in ensuring that that language gap is closed, but also access to AI as small language models tend to work better on low resource devices. That's what I had to add.
Thank you. So as we move forward with using AI and cloud in healthcare, we need to regulate and govern that, right? So what do you think we should need to do to make sure we have a right regulatory framework for this and what are the features you expect to see in this?
Okay. I think regulatory frameworks is something that is going to come from the government side, the government of the day. One of the things that comes to my mind immediately when you talk about regulatory framework, especially in technology and AI, is that you need to create a balance between innovation and accountability. Regulation should not stop innovation, should not limit innovation. But at the same time, regulation needs to make sure that we have proper accountability for whatever AI products we've developed. And another thing is we need some level of transparency. So if we are going to develop an AI system, are you able to explain this to a clinician on off of your head in a way that a clinician can understand? And there is not so much secrecy. So for example, are we able to use, for example, open source systems that anyone can investigate and see what is happening behind the scenes? So that is so much of what I think about when it comes to a regulation framework. So first of all, we need to balance the innovation and the accountability so that we don't kill innovation, but at the same time, we hold them accountable. Yes.
Great explanation. What do you
Okay. I know most countries we are just playing catch up with artificial intelligence. I know that in Uganda here we've just formulated the National AI Task Force, and it's supposed to come up with a national AI policy. Within the Ministry of Health, we're working on having the National Ministry of Health AI policy. And one of the things that is coming out is, one, most of the implementations of artificial intelligence that we are going to have at facilities, they should be interpretable, stroke explainable. The idea is that my colleague has mentioned that we should be able to explain them. What we are saying on our end is that the model should be self-explanatory. So if the model predicts that this person is going to become non-suppressing, or the viral load is going to be non-suppressed, the clinician must understand why the model has come to that conclusion. Now, we have had traditional models, what we call black box models, that are simply saying, okay, the client is going to get lost to follow up. The client is going to get virally non-suppressed, and things like that. But actually, when you ask yourself, why do you think that is the case? Why are you giving me that as a prediction? In most cases, we don't have that. So from a regulatory framework, what we are doing is every model that's deployed at the facility, it should be able to explain every output, every outcome should be explained by the model itself. That builds confidence within the clinicians, because sometimes a clinician, you will give a reasoning, you may give the right outcome, but using the wrong justification. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. You have given me the right outcome, but the reason upon which you're basing is actually wrong. Now, that helps us to troubleshoot those models. So if a clinician tells you, no, we don't use this particular indicator to determine virally non-suppressing clients, then it allows you to improve on the model. So from a regulatory framework, and I hope that colleagues here implementing these projects ensure that most models that we're implementing are explanatory within themselves. That when a clinician looks at it and it says, probably HTS testing, this client will test positive at some point X, the clinician should be able to justify that. Yeah, I think from a regulatory point of view, that is essentially what I wanted to submit. Thank you.
Maybe just a quick addition. Besides the national regulatory frameworks that we need to put in place, I do believe that we need, first of all, to put a regulatory framework within ourselves, within the teams we work with, within the communities we work with. I think it's very important that we ask ourselves, do I actually need to write 5 pages instead of like 5 bullet points? Do I need to submit that PR that was generated and was not verified, and someone else will have to spend their time reviewing it? Should I share this financial data of my organization within this public free plan AI on the web. I think that's really, really important. So I think the government can put all the guardrails in place, but we also need to be very careful ourselves in the way we use AI on our day-to-day basis. Back to you, thanks.
Thank you. So I think our panelists did a great explanation for us on how to use AI and cloud technologies in AI and things about ethical concerns of using that and how we could mitigate those concerns. I think we have some time for a small Q&A session. So feel free, guys, feel free to ask any question from the panel.
Hamish Fraser at Brown University and a long-time OpenMRS person. First of all, really fantastic panel, so refreshing, listening to so much hype about AI and then hearing really practical, knowledgeable thoughts from all of the panelists, so thank you. I think of relevance, and I know Ian talked about this a little bit last year, we've been doing a study of predicting missed visits and loss to follow-up for patients with HIV care in Ampath in Kenya. And we're nearly completed with a large cluster randomized controlled trial where we're actually measuring the impact of this system. And so we're hoping to, despite a rather rough year, we should be able to finish the data collection by the end of this October. What's really striking is that when we started to look very carefully for any evidence to show any benefit of machine learning of any sort in low-income countries, we've been doing a systematic review, we've looked at every paper, we've gone through them forensically, and with the exception of imaging, which we weren't really looking at, the actual EHR or mobile health kind of data, we found 2 studies in the entire world that have actually done a randomized controlled trial, one of which isn't complete, and one of which was looking at the risk of diarrheal disease in children, whether it was bacterial or viral etiology. There is no evidence base at all for AI use at the moment. I mean, with lots of really promising ideas, there's a lot of things published showing that these models have real potential. But, and I think you really spoke to this very clearly, we must know that these are actually effective in the real world. And we don't know that. So I really encourage people to do even simple evaluations, and we need to get things actually published to see, does this model really work in the complex practical situations we're dealing with? And just an aside, in terms of the large language models, again, lots of very thoughtful comments about that. I'm doing a lot of work looking at diagnosis and triage with patient data, actual patient data, and it turns out that there is virtually no rigorous studies of real patient data using large language models. They're all made up things. They're questions from multiple choices, boards. They are, published articles that have all been nicely cleaned up. But when you actually look at real raw data, like EHR data, there's virtually nothing that's been done. So we don't really know. And what we're seeing is that it doesn't work. It's extremely unclear whether it will work well, because one day it's great, the next day it's not. And so we're looking at all the different language models, and we find a lot of problems with them. So I think, although people obviously feel like we need to be trying to move forward with AI in every country, the reality is we don't really know yet how good it's going to be. So I think your skepticism is entirely appropriate.
Yes. Yes, thank you so much. I agree with your sentiments, although it was not a real question. So we are totally in agreement, and if my colleagues have something to add, they will. But I'm familiar with your work at Ampath, coming from Kenya, and I've been to Eldoret so many times, and I know some people who work there. I also agree with your sentiment that we need to start small, and that's what we've been discussing here. So AI and everything is so flashy, but we have to go back to the realities and realize that, we need to start small. I agree with that. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Alice Namale, and I just have observations from the panel discussion. It was clearly mentioned we haven't yet adopted these new technologies or innovations, the AI, the cloud. And I think the challenge is how to build this investment case. And a part of it is what the previous speaker mentioned. We need to package the evidence and convince our policymakers that this works and this is a worthy investment. And Solomon, I think we'll have to sit. Maybe what we could hear from the team here is all the examples or all the examples they've used these systems so that we are assisted in putting together these concepts. Now that you said there's a committee that has been put in place, we need to know where it has worked, what it has done, you know, all the examples where AI has been helpful, how the cloud, you know, storage, computing, whatever has been, where it has really worked, what are those examples, and what are the advantages and disadvantages. I think we do have a lot of work to convince our policymakers to invest in these systems. Thank you. Issues around, you know, models and these algorithms. Of course, they'll come to you and say that was done in the US. Has it been done here? So, what is the evidence we actually have that applies to our countries? Thank you.
Solomon, do you want to add on that?
All right, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Joseph Kiriagana, and I work with Richard Tumbia, based in Uganda. So, picking up from where Dr. Alice ended it, I also have remarks in line with AI. As a colleague from Gitek in Kenya mentioned, we've been much into generative AI, and now we think about going predictive such that we do not just query, but we get the response we shall need readily available. And there my remark comes in that I think one of the ways through which we can have a buy-in from our end users who may think the AI is coming to replace them is by onboarding them into our community of practice such that they act as change agents when the AI gets into play. They help cascade down the message that no, this is not coming to replace us. It's rather coming to supplement us to make us more efficient and effective in our work. I think by so doing, we may have a better buy-in by the users when we go to AI in the predictive model as opposed to when it is in the generative. And I think one may urge it out. Already we have some medics, clinicians within our programs, but we realize that many of these have equally become tech surveys. They equally interpret things the way we do. Just like you've heard Dr. Alice, you know, make remarks like she's a tech savvy. So we need to also tap into those lay medics, clinicians, nurses, and pick up a few of them to be part of our case definitions, among other things. Then back, they can cascade down the information. Thank you.
I think someone has a question right there. Oh.
I wanted to thank all of the panelists for their very thoughtful comments. I've been thinking a lot about what you've said, and if I could maybe paraphrase, I think what you all are saying is that AI doesn't replace a human interaction with a patient, and you're concerned about that. But if I think about technology, and I start with paper as a technology, because it is a technology, right? Paper is a technology. Medical record is a technology, and so we have this new AI. But like, what does that technology do over time? It just reduces effort for a human, right? So paper is some reduction of effort. A medical record is more reduction of effort, and I think AI is probably one of the most pure forms of reduction of effort. But humans are still involved, right? And so I guess my question to the panel is, given what you all have experienced, are there examples where AI could potentially be a huge reduction of effort or scut for a clinical care environment? Do you have any thoughts or suggestions on where AI would be helpful in that regard?
Do we take the questions right now?
You could both answer.
Okay. Um, one of them is exactly what happens in our clinical care practice. So the Ministry of Health has guidelines that if a clinician presents with these symptoms, we have a very, very large data set of clinical care guidelines. And one of the things we're trying to do, okay, as opposed to going out and you're a clinician and you don't have the time to go and read all of these books, is there a way we can implement some form of an LLM or a chatbot where the clinician actually simply asks, I have a patient presenting with this, what is the recommended? Now, the AI is not generating new information at all, because that was one thing that we had to be very careful about. The technology is not generating information out of thin air. What it's simply doing is it is scanning through thousands and thousands of already accepted clinical guidelines and presenting it in the shortest possible time. For me, that was one of the ways that we looked at. And when you engage clinicians, actually, it is something that they would love to do. It is something they would love to see being implemented. That I don't have to go and pick out an encyclopedia out of the library while I have patients in a queue, but if I can simply within the system and say, I have this particular patient, what are the recommended practice? Or for example, if I don't have these drugs in store, what other drugs can I use to replace these particular drugs? Especially now that you have a very young workforce. They may not have the 20 years or so that people have used. Can I simply provide that information? So I think from a very practical example, realistically, that's one of the ways that I would think that AI and technology can simply help us provide information very fast and therefore make us more effective.
Do you have something?
Just a little. So I like, Paul, thank you. I like that analogy that you are bringing up about technology and how it's been growing or evolving over time. Like paper was technology. It solved some big problem many years ago. And then electronic medical records made that even more easier. So now when we look at technology, everyone likes fancy technology. At some point, everyone loves fancy technology. When we bring about the aspect of natural language processing to electronic medical systems, and we make it in a way that clinicians and doctors and specialists can think of the AI as a companion, somebody they are conversing with, instead of an EMR that they are querying, like we've been querying before. So like all of us, we have AI and ChatGPT, but do you know that we still have people who struggle with ChatGPT because they can't write the correct prompts? So the idea is somehow to think of it as a colleague that you're working with. And then you say, we want to do this, we want to do this, how do you think about, like you're conversing with a colleague. Then it becomes very, very nice technology to think about. So everyone loves that at the end of the day. If we can get to that level, we will be at Paul's vision. And I think that is where we are going.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Jay.
Thank you, the panel. My name is Abat from Uganda. My thing is about form entry, as Paul talked about reduction of effort for the clinician at the point of treatment. So Ssevvume talked of anomalies, unclean data, which is a very, very big challenge in e-health in terms of these forms. Sometimes they are so huge and there's a very big queue and the doctor has to work on multiple patients and in a very short time. So can we look at how we can use AI at the point of data capture and making sure that we really have improved data? And how do you think having these forms for the clinician to type in, do you think is it the most convenient way for them to capture the data into the system? Can we look at maybe it's an extra cost on the side of the implementers? Can we look at using the writing pads and the AI is able to translate this information direct to the EMR and be able to change these into observations? That would be a very, very big improvement on the side of clinicians. And you know, of course, some are not so much in terms of typing. It takes a very long time. So writing on a writing pad, which is an e-pad, it's kind of very, very fast for these people. And it will really improve and normalize our data, which will later feed on and be able to generate reports, look at statistics and everything. So my point is on at the point of data entry and having all this data that is very clean, you don't have to come back to it to, I mean, that's also another challenge to clean 1,000 or terabytes of data, which is very, very big challenge. So we can make use of AI to have clean data at the point of capture. Yeah, thank you.
I think we have one more question. And we have only, I'm really sorry, but we only have time for one more question. So even though, we have time for two more questions. And after that, don't worry, you could meet our panelists personally and ask your questions from them. So, yeah.
Um, Good morning, everyone. My name is Oyowe, and I'm from Astute Digital Health. Excellent discussions on what you guys were discussing. I think we need more than several hours to discuss the topics that you raised. AI, regulation, cloud computing, so many different things. But very quick comments. My view about AI and healthcare is that if you remember the Industrial Revolution and how it transformed the world, and then you had the Internet Revolution and how it transformed the world, I think AI is going to have that kind of an impact. And it is still at the very early stages. I completely agree with that. But I think the future is going to be divided into, are you using AI or you're not using AI? And it's going to be like a companion, like Posiponi panel already said. The data, like Mr. Fraser said, is still very limited. We don't know what direction it's going to go. It's kind of like the early days of the internet. We now know how much the internet has permitted everything, but I think it's going to take some time for us to know what direction AI is going to have on healthcare. But it's going to be important that low and middle income countries don't get left behind, I think, the way they were left behind with the internet revolution. I think that as much as possible, we should play a role in this new AI revolution so that the data sets you were talking about, the information that is being used to train these models, is incorporating what is also being generated in low and middle income countries. Because right now, it's just completely skewed to what is available in developed countries. And that brings me to the second comment about cloud computing and hybrid. One of the biggest problems we have in Africa, I think, is lack of data. And even if you have data, the data is in silos. So like you have hundreds of, say, OpenMRS installations in different hospitals. Those are just data sets that have been stored in hospitals. So how do we get our data into a central location that you cannot use to train some of those large models that we're talking about, that is more in line with the data you've actually collected in the environment? And the final comment is, it's very important that solutions that are being developed are designed for the end users. I have a philosophy is that you have to gamify everything. You have to TikTokify everything. People have to be able to use technology. That's one of the reasons why these apps become viral. Once you're able to design something that the least person can use, then of course it goes viral. So every time you make anything more complicated, then you're going to make the solution unlikely to be adopted. I happen to be a physician. I'm a psychiatrist and addictionologist in the US. So I know how technology impacts our workflow. The EMRs were supposed to make our work easier. But I can assure you, if you talk to many physicians in the US, they will tell you it's become a bottleneck because it interfaces between you and why you decided to be a doctor in the first place, which is to save lives and talk to your patients. So when you have another barrier that you want to use, then it's just not helpful for you. So I think it's an excellent discussion about the role of AI, cloud computing. And for regulations, I think that people should not regulate what they don't know. So a lot of people try to draw up regulations, frameworks, but most people in government, as most of you know in Africa, how much do they know about technology or AI? You know, they have some of these frameworks, but the people that make the rules don't really understand the technologies they are regulating. So there's a lot of stuff that needs to be worked out there. But on the whole, excellent. I'm very, very excited to hear that we're having these conversations about these very topical issues as relates to healthcare in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. So, yeah, we have one more question.
Yes, I just wanted to quickly add that we have heard about clinical data, medical record. Then Paul mentioned the reduction of efforts using AI. And Andra, you mentioned also how much the implementers and contributors of OpenMRS should first be careful on how they use AI. And I just wanted to add how we divided things in our team. For example, we split this AI adoption in 3 steps. The first step being to educate ourselves in the community and to make sure that we are all aware of the main concepts and principles of AI first. Like, it's a software community before everything else. So the first step is to address that point and make sure that we all understand what is AI and what are the components. The second step is about what Paul mentioned, which is reduction of efforts. And in our case, and we'll talk more about it on Friday, a big effort was around form development. So we addressed that point and how we can automate form development and bring that to production quickly. And then maybe later, in months or years, we don't know, we will get into clinical. But we want to start with the beginning and then knowledge, the task that takes time, secondly, and then maybe clinical. So just wanted to add on those 3 steps that we are following. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. So you guys have anything there?
No, thank you. So not many questions, but thank you, Michael. And I agree with my colleague here as well. I think all the points just come into unison. And talking about the government regulation framework, I think we need young people in that board that is creating regulation framework so that we don't end up with people putting barriers to things that they don't understand. And you can see this panel here is full of young people. That is exactly what we need at the board that does the regulation. So when we talk about AI, think about the young people because they probably understand it better than most, better than those in the government.
And so even though our panel is young, we were able to gain a lot of knowledge from you guys, and thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience with us. I think we were able to learn a lot of things from you guys. So can we have a big round of applause for our panel? Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you.